Hello. I've been having just an absolutely fantastic couple weeks. Feels so good to kind of be working on my own stuff again. It's completely thrown off my sleep schedule, but yeah, dove back into the boat shoot episode, and just doing a lot of. I thought I was going to be really regimented about how I tackled it. I was going to tackle each scene one at a time and be like check, check, check. But instead, I'm kind of just following my whims. And when you get momentum, sometimes the best thing you can do is just do anything to keep feeding that momentum. But I'm finding I keep with all these shots that I'm doing, I'll reach a point where in my head the shot's basically done, but I do a test render and I go, I don't really buy this. And so I do this kind of sauce pass where I just add all these additional little details and things on top of it, just kind of to make it work. So those are the techniques I wanted to talk about today. If something just feels a little bit too CG, what can you do about it? And this is a bad shot to have up as I'm talking about that, because honestly, I don't buy this shot. There's a lot I like about it. I think it captures kind of the surreal dream midsummer vibe that like the episode progresses into. Like the deeper they get, the more kind of dream like it's supposed to get. But I don't believe for a second that this could be an actual photo somebody took of an actual place. Also, the scaling feels kind of weird of this boat when you look at the size of the people and the grass. But yeah, the reason I'm talking about it is I'm doing a test right now of the grass. I like a lot of this. I like that, this is the grass asset I released a while ago. And I like you can see like the waves of wind kind of passing across it. But when you look at places right here, like you can see the grass is just these stiff fingers. It doesn't have give all the way through the grass. And my assumption had been that like the only thing that really mattered was the tip of the grass, because that's what you'd see. But I think I'm running into a limitation of just kind of this implementation. But at the same time, it works okay. But also, here's some real grass in the real location, and we can use this as reference. Like, first and foremost, it's a much more voluminous. It's much less about seeing the individual blades of grass. These white clumps of flowers are doing a lot to give the entire thing form, and they wouldn't even be all that hard to put together. But the biggest thing is it just kind of feels more voluminous, and we could do this just by having, 1,000 times more grass, shrinking all the grass and just having it be denser and thinner and finer. But computationally, my computer's already not being very happy. So I just did a test render where I've got this kind of volume scatter material on a cube that's lined up with the grass. So I've got like my preview thing, but I want to see how it looked like in the final once all like the child grass is in there too. So let's see how that looks. I don't want it to look like it's a low-lying mist. I want it to feel like, oh, there's just additional complexity to the grass. And so I just rendered some new frames at the end, and well, it does a little something, but I don't think that's really what I'm looking for. And I definitely don't think it's worth like the additional render time. I mean, we could try using a Voronoi texture, like scale to 0 on the z-axis. So it actually maybe here, I'll show you. Voronoi gives us these dots here, and if we scale this to 0, they'll be stretched out. And if we run that through a color ramp with a threshold on it, constant, pull this down. That's probably kind of like grass. I plug this into the density of the volume and maybe change the scale a little bit. Let's see if we can make it kind of tilt a little bit. All the grass is kind of leaning a little bit to the left. So if I create an empty in here, and I set up the mapping to use the coordinates of an object, and we select that empty, which means we'll probably have to change the scale a little bit here. Probably don't need it quite this small. Okay, yeah, there we go. We can hopefully just rotate the empty, and that rotates all the lines here, so it kind of matches our grass. Maybe color it even a little bit more, and maybe even increase the density. Right now it's either like 0 or 1. We can change this value to be 2, so now it's... I don't think this is going to work, but let's render a couple frames. So render 2 frames of that, and just while we're experimenting, I'm going to try doing this with just twice as much grass. Maybe I'll shrink all the grass and just render out a couple more frames. Okay, so here's my original grass. Here's the grass with just the blanket volume. This is the volume with the Voronoi texture on it, which honestly, I don't even really see it. And this is twice as much grass that's like 30% shorter. And I mean, that looks... Who would have thought the trick to having grass with a particle system is to have a lot of grass? The thing is, it only took 10 seconds longer to render twice as much grass. So that's a pretty darn good trade-off to me. So I might start experimenting with this direction. I might add some more of those little plants. I think over here works really good. This is actually a picture of plants that I just have on a plane that I put in a few places. And I think that's doing so much to making it feel like natural shrubbery. I think adding a little bit more variation. I kind of wanted that uniform, like, wheat field kind of vibe. I think adding more stuff like that can help. But this has nothing to do with what I want to talk about today. I mean, it does a little bit, because I'm a very firm believer in happy accidents. You tweak stuff, you follow stuff, you discover new things. But when somebody hires you, they don't want you to have accidents. They're hiring you so you can do things on purpose. And so I very much felt as if I've been coasting on a backlog of information instead of like actually expanding anything. But yeah, when you mess around for just 20 years, you discover lots of little things that work and don't work. And so yeah, that's the stuff I want to talk about today. Let's go. I've been working on a lot of shots for, I think I'm going to replace this sparks with stock footage. A lot of stuff for this sequence right here. And what I really like about this is that this is all simulated with rigid body stuff. Like I set up all the rules and the relationships between all the things, and then I was just able to kind of animate it in real time. But that was the whole thing. So I'm just going to release, it's a technical video where we're dialing in physics. So I'll release that as its own thing, but I did document making this. But I'm sure the thing that was really catching your eye was this little dust particle floating by down here. Just a couple pieces of dust moving through the scene. I think this is the shot I'm going to mostly be breaking down today. But yeah, if you look in the distance here, there's just little things floating by as if they're like, I don't know, maybe they're gnats, tiny little bugs, or like pieces of pollen. But to me, this adds so much. These are load bearing, you know, you're looking at something that's CG, but there's just a couple little things floating by in the foreground. I love that. And all they are is a cube, and then tab into edit mode and hit Control B to bevel it, kind of turn it into a round thing, tab back into object mode, right click, shade smooth, and there we go. There's our pollen particle. I'm going to give it a new material, just going to make it translucent. Going to put it in its own collection, hit M, new collection. I'll call this dust. Okay, and I'll hide that. Going to create a big volume for all of the dust. That'll just be a cube here. Scale it up nice and big. Going to give it a new material, just make the box itself be transparent. In fact, let's go to wireframe mode right now. And for the inside, we're going to create a new particle system. And we've got two options here. We've got emitter, which means it'll kind of be emitted from the object like popcorn, and we have hair, which means it's scattered across, you know, a surface or a thing, and it's always there, and it kind of always will be. What's cool about hair is you don't necessarily even have to simulate it. If we go down under render here, we can render it as a collection, and that collection will be our dust. You can see right now it's all on the surface, but if we go back up to the source pull down here and change that to volume, it's coming from the inside. And here we can turn the scale down to like 0.005 and increase the randomness a little bit. But you could literally just use this, like animate it going by really slow, and there you go. You've got dust drifting by in the wind. This is exactly what I did for this shot, if you can even see that in the compression. But I wanted the air to feel kind of heavy and dense and dead, and so all of the things just kind of moving in this laminar type way worked really good for the scene. But if you want things to be a little bit more dynamic, we can go emitter instead. I'm going to have every single particle appear on frame 1, which means the frame start and end are both going to be 1. And let's make the lifetime like 500 frames. And here we'll make this 500 long too. If we hit play, oh, it's hard to see. If you select the object, you can kind of see the outline, and that shows it a little bit better. In fact, let's turn the scale up just a little bit more here. You can see everything falls. But if we scroll down under field weights, you can see what affects the particles. And right here, gravity's at 100%. I'm going to change that to 0. Now if we hit play, you can see that all the particles near the top are going up, down, left, and right. And the longer it goes, the more you can kind of see that each face is the thing propelling the particles out along its own direction. And that's because under velocity, it's using the normal of the closest face to push it in that direction, 1 meter per second. If we change that to 0, everything should just stay totally static, which is good. This is still playing right now, but just nothing's happening. So we can add our own forces. Let's hit Shift A, force field wind. Let's blow it that way. And under the physics panel, we've got all of our strength and different settings for that. But I just want everything to blow nice and smooth. On top of that, let's add another force field. We'll set that to turbulence, where we've got, now you can see everything is starting to be a little bit more interesting. And this is probably pretty good for a default. Like, you can change the size of the turbulence, displacement, and the strength and all of that, but this is pretty good. A final thing you can do if you want, like, it's so cool that this stuff will just play with the different force fields. Let's add a force in the middle here. I'm going to turn the max distance it can affect things to be about that big. I'll change the strength to be negative something. And this should just, yeah, suck in any particle like a black hole that gets into its radius. Let's change the power to be like 1. So now it kind of has a soft increase in power the further in you get. Or what if we change this to wind and maybe turn down the radius and turn the power to be positive, just kind of pointing off in the direction. But imagine you had like a fan on a desk in like a dusty room. Every particle that went by the fan would actually be blown by the fan. And that might seem a little bit ridiculous, but like, if the point of the shot is you're trying to sell the feeling of being in a hot room, anything you can do to like viscerally convey that, if you want to see the air moving and like, you know, the things being disturbed by the wind and like all of that stuff, this could, you know, be the thing that really makes the shot just kind of work. I don't know. All right, what's next? In the shot before this one, we have this kind of flare coming in over her shoulder, and I wanted to keep that kind of flare going a little bit to tie everything together. So you can see it kind of fade in right there, and it kind of implies that we're moving out of some object shadow. And the bit I really like is coming up towards the end where we kind of dip behind something. So you'll see the whole right side of the image kind of get darker and lighter again. Whoop. I like that. It's technically a lens flare, but without seeing any, you know, obvious little optical type things going on. It's just kind of an overall darkening and lightening. And we could do that in Blender itself, but like, I realized I wanted it after the render was done, so I'm just doing it in the timeline. I found a picture of a lens flare that kind of matched. I blurred it, and I'm just turning up the visibility of it a little bit right here in the timeline. I'm doing it for the next shot too. As we kind of pass out of the shadow here, I'm fading in this just extra little bit of flare, and it adds so much kind of that warmth that I wanted. And again, pushed everything just to match the original footage quite a bit closer. I want to work on this shot with you guys. It still needs a lot of love, and this is my little low-res sprawl asset, and you can kind of, it's just too many polygons. So I want to turn this into an actual kind of restaurant or something where you can see things going on, and like, you know, people are waving as the ship is passing by. If we were to try to do it in Blender, here, let's create a plane right in front of the camera here. We're basically trying to simulate light hitting in a perfect lens. So I'm just going to add a little translucent layer immediately in front of the camera. Let's see, move it ahead until it goes out of the camera's clipping range. There we go. I'm going to give it a new material just called translucent. And I'm going to, in the shader editor, mix that with the transparent shader, mix shader. And I'm going to make it like probably almost like 98% transparent. And let's see how that looks. Ooh, even that's a bit much. Let's try like 0.996 or something. Yeah, it's subtle, but even this compared to 100%, you can see it just fills in some of the shadows here, adds a little bit of gunk. We could push it if we wanted. The reason I don't like doing it this way is because path tracers are all about optimizing the route of, like, you know, the light rays getting to the camera. And if you put a whole plane right in front of the camera, that means every single path has to pass through this translucent layer, which to me seems as if it could just kind of affect the overall efficiency of, you know, the path tracer. What else do we got? Oh, I've got these cables going on the walkway. It was just feeling a little bit too image texture on geometry, and so I wanted to break it up a little bit, and this is really easy to do. Let's say we have a plane here, and we've got a Bezier curve over the top of that. We can obviously, under the curve settings, go down under geometry and turn up the depth of the bevel, which gives it a little bit of that, you know, wire thickness. But if we go into edit mode, we can literally just draw the new Bezier curve. And so we'll be like, hey, here's like, you know, it's coiled up on itself and woo, it goes here. And right now it's doing that kind of like perpendicular to the camera view. You can see like the camera was here looking at it. But if we just check the surface box, and it also gives us a little cleanup, error refine thing, so we can decide how much of the original curve we kind of want to keep. I think having some hard angles in the curve actually helps quite a bit, but you know, you can dial it in. And this bit where it's kind of overlapping itself, if we go into edit mode, we just select a couple of these faces here, we can pull them up, and there we go. Now it's not all whatever. And if you have a sun going and make it maybe a orange color. Oh, and look at that. It's actually trying to It projected on top of this wire too, because we're at this angle. So well, that's kind of cool. But yeah, that's an easy way to add extension cords and wires and things in the background. What else? Oh, I didn't get the scale of this right, but you can see I kind of am trying to fake some water caustics over here. It kind of just looks like, but like let's say you have something going on like this. You've got your glass shader. I think the index of refraction of water is like 1.33 or something. There we go. Now everything is refracting properly. What we're going to do is we're going to cheat the shadow. And so over here, we're actually going to separate out the light paths that the path tracer is using an input light path node. And a shadow ray is a really important part of a path tracer. It's a ray that's literally just trying to see if it's casting a shadow or not from a light source. They're doing a lot of heavy lifting. And so all of this dark stuff down here is being controlled by shadow rays. So what we want to do is set up a mix shader here, and one of them will be glass and the other will be transparent. And we'll plug the shadow ray into the mix factor. So now the water has no shadow and it looks kind of weird, but what's happening is if it's a regular ray, if the camera's just looking at it, it sees glass. But if it's one of those rays trying to find a light source, it doesn't see anything. But what's cool is we can tint the transparent shader to be kind of whatever we want. And now suddenly regular water, but it has like a red shadow, which is a little bit bizarre. But what if instead of red, we gave it some sort of actual caustic type texture? And to do that, I'm just kind of trying to blast through this one. We can use a Voronoi here using distance. And let's put that through a gamma also to just kind of like sharpen it up a little bit. And look at that. That already looks like, you know, refractions on the bottom of a surface. We can change the scale too. And if we want to animate it, I've got the node wrangler turned on, so I can just hit Control T to get the mapping nodes here. I'm going to rotate it a little bit, just kind of to offset the texture just in case. And if I animate this value, we can see it just, it looks like natural kind of caustics going underwater. So I'm going to hover over this input and hit I, go to a little bit later, change the value a little bit and hit I. And if I select both of these keyframes and hit Shift E in the timeline, linear extrapolation, it'll just keep doing that forever. Here, let's bring them a little bit close together to speed it up, maybe even a little bit faster. We can still always change the scale. And if that's too intense, we can just mix it in with some other color here that maybe we'll use to push everything just a little bit darker. And there we go. That's a nice, really fast, efficient to render way to add caustics under a scene. And if we want to be really cool, we can add a volume scatter shader into here. And I think, as we found in the last video, my, is for, in water droplets, used for scattering clouds. Oh, it even tells you right here. Which one's the underwater one? Interstellar dust. Underwater environments. Okay. But you can see the shadows also being cast in the volumetric stuff here too. So like how easy is that? That's pretty fantastic. And can we tint it like a little bit of a blue type thing? Yeah. All right. What else do we got here? We've got the birds. I talked about the birds in the last video, but let's go into it again, because a thing I've been doing a lot is normally I would bring these into Resolve or Fusion. I do some sort of like Luma matte and I'd export it as pre-keyed EXR sequences, you know, with an alpha channel and all of that. But sometimes you don't want to bother. Sometimes you want to do the keying just right in the shader editor. So in this case, I'm taking the footage of the birds here and I'm running it through a color ramp to kind of sharpen the contrast a little bit. And I'm using that to control the mix factor between a diffuse shader and a transparent shader. And it's quick and it's fast and it's easy, and it still lets me kind of dial in the feathering of the motion blur on the bird's wings and all of that if I want to push things around. I do the same thing a lot for like, you know, something like this where the sky's the brightest part. Here, we'll bring it in emissive like this. In the shader editor, I'm going to drag the color into the alpha instead. And right now the sky's the brightest thing, so it's also the most opaque. But if we use our little color ramp here and just invert that, we can kind of just dial things in the way we want it. So that controls the alpha, and we can still do like color correction on the regular texture itself too, and just stick this in the background. You never had to even worry about it. So like I've got this stuff in the background here, which I probably should give more love to. I'm working on it, but like I've got big chunks here, and then just to like give the chunk some life, I'll line up a fire escape or something just sticking out of the edge, just to give it a more kind of interesting silhouette using the technique we just talked about. What else? Oh, I've got my, do you remember I filmed a bunch of garbage from the freeway and I turned that into an asset I released a while ago, of just like little blowing plastic kind of down here. And if you look, like I just stick it like in places right there and right there where it's like, no, it would make no sense to actually do a cloth sim there. But because here it's basically free, it's so nice to just kind of stick places. In fact, I should stick it even like I don't buy any of this really. Like I look at that, I'm like, that's not a real metal shape. This is nothing. And I think that's for a bunch of reasons. The material is just this matte, flat green, and I'm kind of doing like a little bit too much like orange ambient occlusion rust stuff to it, but like the texture doesn't match what the actual object is. It's not reacting to light in any interesting type of way. And just the detailing, you know, every line is perfectly straight. I don't have a single thing on here like breaking up. I mean, I've got greebles. I've got greebles for days, but yeah, just something about this entire crane I've never really bought. Something I do buy is the tarps over here on this boat, and I think we actually made this boat together in a tutorial like maybe a couple years ago at this point. But yeah, this is a cloth sim, and it adds so much just randomness to the whole thing, and especially having it a little bit glossy and translucent. You can see the light shining and interacting with it. Seeing a kind of another instance of it down here. This does a lot for me. So something I could do is just create, you know, say there's some sort of tarp that goes over this to protect the mechanisms underneath, and that would probably elevate this whole thing quite a bit. Kind of some sort of scrunched accordion type thing. I don't know. Oh, and then of course there's noise modifiers. Like if you look, there's an antenna here and some ropes, and I think this whole module, and all of them are swaying just a little bit. All of that motion is completely random. It adds some good life. I've grown a little bit skeptical, just straight up noise modifiers doing motion, just because it is so random that unless if you have things really dialed in, it's not. This motion isn't actually coming from anything. It's not matching the movement of the boat rocking. Nothing's affecting anything else. It's stuff wiggling, and it's just a thing to be aware of, because we could do an actual cloth sim on this based off of the movement of the actual boat, and so the wires would actually be, you know, responding, and that would have like a reality to it, and at some point your brain might be able to kind of lock into that and be like, oh, for some reason I really feel the motion of this boat because everything's doing what it's supposed to. But that also requires obviously setting up a full simulation. So the easy way to just do this is, let's say we've got this antenna going up like that. Here, we'll curve it. Yeah. And the origin is down here at the bottom, so if we hit I to add a keyframe, and then we go into the graph editor, we can pick one of these axes, maybe just the rotation axis here under modifiers. This is the oldest trick in the book. All of you already know this, so I'm going quick. But yeah, you do that. You can turn up the scale. You can turn down the strength. And you have something like this kind of sticking off the back of like a spaceship or a boat or something, and it's just, it gives that implication of secondary motion. But all of you know that one, so let's do something that I don't think many people do, that's been the biggest in the past like 6 months, probably the biggest thing that I've kind of learned that I'm really excited about, and that is bounced light. Like you got this street here, but like the sun is bouncing off of the buildings, and it's creating all of this bounced light. And this is exactly the type of thing that like at least Blender's Path Tracer is really bad at rendering. It can't really do this. Or like right here, just these little patches right there. And I don't really see anybody ever doing this with CG, but what's fun about it is because it's reflected light, it's shining in the exact opposite direction as the sun. So you can use it to kind of like highlight compositionally things you want people to kind of, like things you want to have a little extra pop. So for this scene right here, I just have a spotlight with like a picture of curtains that I can shine kind of wherever I want, as long as it's kind of going opposite of the direction of the sun. And look at that, being able to just like kind of place it somewhere. I really believe that as bounced light, and it's just kind of so easy to do. So let's say we have our sunlight hitting this direction. I'm just going to duplicate this, rotate it to be kind of like just the inverse, you know, reflected direction. Change that to a spotlight. You can turn the power up to something kind of bananas right now. And in the shader editor, I'm going to check use nodes and just plug an image texture into the color here. You used to have to do all of this wacky stuff with, like, you know, using the normal and everything. We'll find out if we still have to do that. And here, just to make it kind of interesting, let's use, yeah, maybe this. I'll just save this. And I'll load it in, open image, and maybe tweak the gamma a little bit. And we want it to feel like parallel light, so we might want it a little bit further away here. Let's also make the sun kind of match that same color. Also, the radius of the spotlight blurs the entire thing, so if we turn the radius up like this to just kind of do that, we'll add some other geometry here to kind of... And look at that. Like, that just feels very luminous and kind of alive. And you can move this, you know, around too, and it's going to add a whole bunch of just interesting life to your shot. Oh, that's really gorgeous. One thing I really love about path tracers is, in general, the more you learn about real life light, the more that's going to empower you to work with the path tracer, or the way you work about, you know, you learn about film lighting, the different things that they do on set. You can translate those tricks directly into the digital realm, which I think is cool. The one thing they're not good at, again, is reflected light, because that goes against their optimizations, but that's where it's kind of fun to cheat it. Again, back when I started, when a lot of us started, you couldn't bounce light like this. Here, if we turn the light path bounces down to 0, and we use a spotlight here, and we crank it up, you can see the light doesn't go anywhere. This is what everything was like, and it took like 20 minutes to render every frame. So if you wanted to simulate a bounce light, you had to literally just put another light there, turn up the radius. In fact, let's warm this up a little bit too. Can we just copy this and paste that color? Yeah, there we go. So that's how we were doing everything. Path tracers to me still feel like magic. And I still sometimes do this. Like, when I was rendering the boat, it just felt so kind of dark and dead. And so I made the water be an emissive plane that was kind of had this golden color to it. And you can see here, it's casting this orange light up onto it as if it's the light bouncing off of the grass. And it's not actually what would happen, because, you know, in the path tracer, it didn't. But to me, this connected it to the environment and made everything feel so luminous. I use the word luminous maybe too much, but it's the word that's in my head when I'm kind of trying to work on this stuff. Like, I want the grass to feel like it's this big tangible thing that exists in space and kind of interacts with light. Sometimes I'll cheat the amount of light. Like, I think we actually made these green materials together a year ago, 2 years ago, but I wanted that green light to just really saturate the area underneath. So I'm using an add shader, and an add shader in general kind of violates the laws of physics unless if the thing is like actively supposed to be emitting light. But I used it in this case just to like add the values from the original translucent shader to this other one, just to give it kind of this little extra pop. And that way I can just hand tweak the light that's kind of being passed out from the underside of the, like, look at that. That's kind of the feeling that I wanted. This just very bright, glowing thing. All that said, I have reworked this shot to death. I will sit here tweaking everything for hours until I find like a composition that I think works, and then I'll render it and I compare it to the previous version, and I hate the new version. I'm like, like, there's so many elements here that I feel should work, and I look at the final shot every time, and it's just like, no, I don't like that at all. In fact, let's use a couple things we've been talking about. I forgot to eat, so my words are probably going to start floating away at some point. But let's use the snipping tool. I use the snip tool all the time just for grabbing stuff that I don't really care about. Here, let's save this. Call this white flowers. And here in Blender, this is my grass layer. Just to speed everything up, I'm going to turn off the visibility in the viewport. And let's import mesh plane. Our grass right here. And to prepare it for the particle system, I'm going to rotate it backwards 90 degrees, so it's aiming straight along towards the y-axis. And the origin is going to be what appears as the root of the particle, and so I want this to be up above that a little bit. And I'll apply the rotation. If I go into rendered mode, there's our little flowers right here. I'm going to disconnect all of this and just drag the color into the alpha. Create our color ramp, and maybe I'll just do this with a constant and just drag this down until the flowers are the brightest thing in the shot. So we should just be able to, yeah, isolate them like that. Here, maybe we'll turn on ease and turn up transmission, maybe like 50%, so the sun can shine through them a bit. In fact, and why am I doing this? These just look like white blobs. There's so many better ways to do this, but that's okay. I'm gonna split this up into a few different layers here. I'm just trying to maneuver around this one flower right there. Maybe like that and like that. And if I select these and hit Y, that'll separate them from everything else. So I'll just kind of do these two, which gives us 5 different bunches. And I go hit P, separate by selection. And all of them still have the same origin though, and I want the origin to be like beneath them. So I'll just go into each of these, slide it over so they're all over their origin. Oh, wait. I meant to do separate Select everything, hit P, separate by loose parts. Now everyone is its own object. Okay. Gonna hit M, put it in a new collection. We're gonna call this white flowers. Create. Gonna go back into our grass scene, create a new particle system. We'll call this white flowers. It'll be hair. Go to collection as white flowers. Set the scale up to 1. Everything's all jittered and playing with the turbulence and all that. I think I want everything to just stay stiff. Yeah, like that. Let's go to advanced, which gives us the rotation tab here. And I think, hopefully I can just, rotate them so they're all facing the camera like this. And there we go. Now we've got our little white flowers. And you know what? I don't actually trust transmission. I think transmission in the principled shader works okay if it's an object with depth. For whatever reason, and I might be wrong about this, but if it's just a 2D object, I feel like the original translucent shader actually gives better results. So I'm just going to mix between transparent and translucent using that same value instead of going through the PBR shader. And there we go. See, now it's actually interacting with the light quite a bit better. I'm going to scale the randomness. You'll notice the randomness scale, it always randomizes it erring on the side of shrinking it down, and so you make it as big as you want, and then you just shrink it. And a lot of these are instancing in the same point, so you can see they're all kind of glitching out like that. If I go random, okay, if I change it to random, it seems like that kind of helps a little bit. Although these guys look like they're kind of glitching out, so let's see if we can figure out what's going on there. They're all going kind of along this way here. What if I just add an? Oh, this is an N-gon. There's this wacky stuff up here. If I hit X limited dissolve. Does that fix it? Okay, now it's an actual plane with four squares. So that should be good. So let's turn on everything else and let's see how that looks. Yeah, okay. That actually works. That works pretty darn well. Maybe I will let this render and go get food. And it's a couple days later, and this looks fine. There's still some weirdness and stuff, but it's reached a level where it's like I could have this in the episode and feel totally fine about it. I like the smaller grass. Still feels a little stiff, but those little white flowers, even though they're not moving at all, I think do a lot to kind of like add just a little bit of variety. I might actually punch him up a little bit if I ever did a re-render of this. And I don't know if you remember in the last episode, there was this rope here that I was trying to give some attention to. So I added this buoy, and I think I smoothed it out a little bit too much. And I didn't really buy it, considering it's like the center of the shot. And I wanted to figure out some way to bring it to life a little bit more. But yesterday I was going for my walk down by the water, and there's this rope hanging between the poles, and just look at all that. We can do that. So I took one of my little like garbage tufts and I just put it into a particle system on the rope. And look at that. That looks a lot better. In fact, maybe I'll even make it like a little bit bigger. Yeah, and this combined with like I've got water dripping from all of this too, which I might even amp up as if it's like, you know, coming from all these pieces of seaweed or whatever. That looks much better. I also increased the buoy sway a little bit. But the thing I started last night, my friend Tom came over a couple days ago to catch up, but then since he was here, I was like, put on the jacket. That jacket, so it's covered in, you can kind of see here, these are like actual metal. This jacket is so heavy. It's like probably 30 something pounds. Tom is such a trooper. His wife picked it up and she got mad at me that I was having her husband wear that jacket, which is fair. And we got this shot here. I filmed it on my Sony a7S III, which isn't really the best camera for green screen work because of the bit depth and all of that. But I was able to key this out, and I dropped him into this scene right here because I already had the water and everything all set up. So I just used the other shot as the starting point and kind of tried to match. We had this overcast but kind of directional sunlight coming in, and so I was trying to imply that with like light bouncing off of stuff and kind of hitting him. I think I need to give it a little bit more love though. Also, he's I think a little bit too dark. It's funny, you can look at something for a long time. Like that's twice as bright and that still kind of looks okay. What if we go to like 0.3? Well, now that's getting a little bit too bright, but it's also crazy because here, if it comes in an emission of 1, this does not look linear I mean, none of this really looks linear until you start getting it really dark. This still looks like it's log or something, but I do think it actually is linear, and you just kind of have to trust the process a little bit. That said, this is my test render from last night, which I like to do as early as possible, just so 1, I can drop it in the edit and kind of see how it feels, but 2, just so I can make a laundry list of things I really need to tackle. And unfortunately on this shot, it's a bunch of things. The water, I thought I had... The water's simultaneously like, oh, look at that. And also like, I don't believe that for a second, you know? I did subdivide the whole thing right before simulating it one more time, which I thought would kind of give me these crisp little ripples. You can see right now it just kind of has this like smoothed out molasses feeling. So I want to tackle that. I'm just going to go through kind of my list of like things I'm noticing that I know I'm going to want to work on here. I'm going to still be shooting better high res. I think some really high res foam kind of churning in the background, as opposed to like, you can see the compression in this stuff, will go a long ways into like adding a little bit more reality to the water. Right now everything is just, this is low res. The actual simulation itself is a little bit too smoothed out. I need something sharp. I need some piece of foam or something that has some actual fidelity to it to sell the whole thing. I do like the feeling, this bit here of like just seeing these big cement shapes and the boat entering into it and all of that. I like this and the feeling of like being in this labyrinth. I'm trying to establish from the beginning that like without a map this place gets really complicated, so that part works really good. I also, maybe I went overboard, but I added a unifying rust pass like we've talked about in the past to all of this stuff to bring it all together. You can see on the very first frame, this is the before, where it's just, you can see the ropes and the tire and this and that, and it's all of these different assets. And then on the next frame it kind of pushes them all to just kind of be this muddy brown. Again, I'm doing it a little bit too far in certain things. Like I've got this kind of spring piston here that once it gets the gunk, all of that detail just disappears, and so I have to give everything a little bit more attention. But look at how much this piece of plastic here is doing. That's selling this whole area up here, and like I've got more, you know, dangling here and from the back, and that's doing a ton. The pieces of dust going by, in general, I like them. Like these little bits over here are good, but these ones that go right in front of the camera are like very blobby and distracting. We could, here's my dust particle here. We can use a mix shader and actually have it disappear once it reaches a certain, you know, fade out when it gets close to the camera. Here, let's do a mix shader. I haven't done this in a very long time, but here we'll mix the original particle with the transparent shader again, and this one will be governed by, what is it, camera data? Let's try distance. And right now this is doing the opposite because it means we can only see things when they're less than a meter away. But if we go into here and go color, and future Ian stepping in here because past Ian was not being very smart, it's literally outputting the distance just as a value in meters. And if you look at the factor here, when it's 0, it's using the first input. When it's 1, it's using the second. And so when it's at 0 meters, we want it to be transparent. So I'm going to just swap the inputs, and then everything will just start fading out once it gets closer than a meter to the camera. And if we want, we can, you know, make it a little sharper, maybe crunch it up so it's like completely gone by half a meter from the camera. But yeah, that's all you got to do. And also, frustratingly, it looks like there's a little jitter. He's kind of popping around a little bit, especially when we're up close. That could be due to a bad motion track. That could be due to the fact that I have another smoother camera going parallel that like isn't moving in the exact same way, though normally that doesn't matter too much. So I'll figure that out, and I think I'll just model some actual mechanisms, like places where, you know, this stuff all mounts and everything. And then I would love to, obviously, add some sort of actual rigid body simulation on top of this just to really sell the swaying motion. Some warning label or like, you know, a boat license plate. And let's just do it. I just modeled this stuff up right here. We'll do it with rigid body physics. Let's make sure everything is converted to a mesh and we've applied the scale to everything. If you want more in depth, go watch one of the other rigid body tutorials I did this year. But yeah, F3, add passive, because we want it to be part of the simulation but not actually moving, and we can also parent this to the ship, and we want to use this motion. So I'm also, under the rigid body physics settings here, going to check animated. I'm going to set all of these objects to active, and then if we hit play, they'll fall right to the ground. That's perfect. So we just want to attach these. Rigid body simulations don't really like it when things are small, and these objects are pretty small and they're also very thin, so we'll see how this works. But first, let's attach this one to this. I'm just going to select that and hit F3 connect, and I think we're going to add little strings here, and so let's kind of serve as a hinge. So let's change this to hinge. And this is our constraint, which will serve as the hinge. The hinge is the only constraint that uses the z-axis for some reason, so let's rotate this 90 degrees and put it where we want the hinge point to be. Gonna do the same thing with this one and these ones. And this one I kind of want to twirl as if it's like on the end of a string or something. And so I'm going to use a connect. I'm going to use a point constraint. And all that does is constrain the distance, basically. And maybe I'll even start it a little bit offset, so when the simulation starts, it's already swinging a little bit. Yeah, we'll move this all the way over to here. And if we're lucky, when I hit play, it'll all just work. And for whatever reason, it doesn't really start until frame 3. So I might start the simulation at like frame -20. And it doesn't want to stop swinging around like crazy. But the big thing is, if you want to attach rigid body stuff to something that's already animated, doing this technique where you're using a passive object that's animated and parented to it is kind of your way of linking the two things. And I kept messing around a little bit. It turns out increasing the mass of each one of these plates gave a more steadier result. So that's nice. And just to finish this video up, I went through and I kind of did most of that stuff I was talking about. Modeled all these new mechanisms here. I added this kind of roll cage thing around him, just kind of because he felt like he was on a card, and so anything I could do to sandwich him in the scene. Oh, and guess why the motion track wasn't working? It's because I'd stabilized it in Resolve, and I'd exported all of my tracking plates and keyed plates with stabilization, which is doing this kind of digital warping, which is why I could get all the tracking points on one side of the shot to kind of work, or the other, but like, yeah, so the moment I fixed that, everything just worked. Excellent. Yeah, I like these little swinging plates on the back. That adds quite a bit. And I'm getting much happier with the water. I never really figured out how to get a better a dynamic paint solution for the waves, but the Voronoi texture we tried at the beginning of the video finally ended up being useful. I'm using it just kind of localized over this wake part to add just kind of little wavelet stuff on top of it to add a little bit more fidelity and kind of resolution to the simulation. I spent a whole afternoon just doing all of these tests, tweaking settings of the dynamic paint. I think it's a glitch in the simulation. Like it's not actually good, but these little high frequency kind of rivulet things mixed in there, I thought added a lot of realism to it. So that's why I added the Voronoi on top of that to kind of try to emulate that a little bit. Also, I modeled little bubbles. Yeah, this guy right here, which is maybe more high res than it needs to be, but it's just being instanced a lot, so that's not too heavy. And I'm doing the distance trick, so the bubbles kind of disappear with distance, so they only really show up near the boat. But it adds kind of this sticky, kind of scummy feeling to the water that I think works really good. Oh, you can see it on the tire here. I added this kind of water level to imply like the tire's a little bit wet. And I just made that part of the unifying dust group I'm throwing at the end here, kind of the dirt node group, where I just have a gradient texture and it's using the object coordinates of an empty here. So I can move that up and down. And I'm just multiplying the values of that gradient against the original texture. I mean, what would be cool is if this was actually like a little bit shinier or something like that. But in this case, I don't know, just having this floating just above the actual level of the water in the scene, I think kind of works okay. I also added these brackets. I found all these sticking out of like cinder blocks in the woods one day, and I forgot I scanned them forever ago. So that's adding a bit. So yeah, I'm feeling a lot better about this shot. Still things to do on it. Like, I don't really believe this area up here. And the concrete material in general sometimes works. Like, this bit actually I think holds up okay. And this concrete stuff on the edge, like, it's okay. And I'm doing some stuff with kind of using some bevel shaders and noise textures to kind of add, like, worn cement to the corners here. And I don't know if I totally buy that. But it's okay for now. Also, there's light passing on the boat, which could probably be hitting him, you know, but the big thing is just that there's no narrative element to the shot at all. He's got to be going somewhere. You have to be seeing something that's saying something. Right now, this is just a VFX shot that says, look, it's Tom in a boat. And I already have those. So I think I'm going to, add the entrance to the town up there. So you're kind of looking ahead, being like, ooh, where's he going? But yeah, that's basically what I've been up to. Just stacking lots of little techniques until hopefully the shot works. I'm going to be finishing up the tutorial for making this little crane thing here. I've been having so much fun with rigid bodies. It's literally every single shot now. I'm like, where can I slip a little simulation? But yeah, until then, I will let you go. I'm gonna go. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna finish editing this video. All right, talk to you soon.